may experience things like inability to sleep, may experience things like loss of appetite, cannot eat very well like they used to do before. So those are part of the physical components of grief. There are also what we call cognitive components, which have to do with thoughts. That is when the individual starts to think about the kind of relationship they've established with that person that is dead. The kind of even having thoughts of or desire to go and meet the person who is gone. Some people would be saying things like, wait and hold me and take me along. Let me come and meet you there and things like that. So those thoughts keep coming. They are part of a normal grief. Then also there are emotional aspects of it where the individual feels sad, the individual feels anxious, afraid of what will happen next. You hear people saying things like, we don't even know who is going next and things like that. So feelings of depression or sadness or feeling anxious is also a part of a normal grief. There are also behavioral aspects of it. You can see people in the grieving process leaving the properties of the deceased person untouched. For instance, if a wife is grieving following the death of her husband, you can enter the house and discover that maybe the cup, the clothes, the shoes that the husband used to wear, everything is still intact 3 months after the death of the husband. And the woman has not touched any of those things. And we forbid anybody from touching those things. That's also a component of common things that we can see with grief. That's a behavioral component of it. There will also be the perceptual components. For instance, a woman who is grieving following the death of her husband can tell you that she went to the market and she saw her husband, in the market, maybe in a crowd of people. And in an attempt to approach the husband, she discovered that she didn't know where the husband went to. All of a sudden, the man disappeared. So obviously, the man was not there. It's just from her own perceptual processes that those things were coming from. So those are important components of grief, and we can also call them types of grief that an individual can go through. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan. The next question also is for you. So we're asking, how long does grief last for? And I think you already talked about the phases of grief, but you could also talk about it again. So how long does it last for, and what are the phases of grief?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, there's no perfect way of grieving, and there's no perfect defined duration for a grief to last. However, researchers have shown that a normal grief should not last more than 6 months. And by the time grief is lasting more than 6 months, then we need to start thinking of offering professional assistance to that individual. However, this can be said to actually affect maybe the behavioral aspect of it, of grief, the emotional aspect of it, and the impact on the functioning. For instance, during the period of grief, an individual may not be able to concentrate on work, may not be able to concentrate on academics. Those are aspects of functioning. Now, we don't expect this impact on functioning to proceed beyond 6 months. By the time this is going beyond 6 months, then that individual can be said to have crossed to the point where we say he or she has an abnormal grief and may actually need professional assistance in combating that challenge. Having said that, the phases of grief, it's important to understand the phases of grief so that when we are trying to mourn with someone that is grieving, we understand what phase of grief they are, and also understand the kind of intervention that we may need to offer at that point in time. The popular one that we almost everybody is aware of is the Kubler-Ross phases of grief, which defines 5 phases. The first one is denial. When the loss happens immediately, the individual is in shock. The significant other is in shock and is denying. And we see that from time to time, the person telling you that, no, it can never be my husband. I saw him this morning before he left for work, so he couldn't have died by accident, So at that point in time, the person is denying. It is difficult to accept. So that is the first phase of grief. That is the phase of denial. Then after that, the next phase is the phase of anger. in which at that phase, anything people try to say is met with a kind of resistance, with a kind of anger, like people telling the individual that, oh, sorry, we understand that it's difficult, that you have to lose your husband at this point in time, but what has happened. In the face of anger, the next response would be the person that is grieving responding with, no, it's your husband that will die, not my husband. Understand that kind of thing. So at that point in time, that is the face of anger. And people that have come to mourn with that individual should actually understand that the phase in which this person is actually this particular phase, which we actually, win off with time. Then the individual moves to the third phase of, which is the phase of bargaining. Bargaining involves trying to, weigh the reality against the wish. Is it possible that my husband has died? Could it have happened that he actually died? So the individual starts to entertain the reality of having lost something significant or having lost someone significant. That is the phase of bargaining. Then after that, the individual goes into the phase of depression. The phase of depression, after bargaining, when I was talking about bargaining, I said the individual is trying to weigh the reality, trying to accept, is it possible? Could it have happened? But in the phase of depression, that is the phase where the individual is actually moving towards acceptance. And, something that is so shocking like that is difficult to accept. Then the individual goes into a phase of depression where you see them, they are sad, they are sad, they have lost interest in things they used to enjoy doing and things like that. Then after that phase, the individual goes to the last phase, which is the phase of acceptance. That is when he or she actually accepts that, yes, this person has gone. I will not see him again. And that phase is also known as what we call closure. That at that point in time, the individual can see their mind, and say, okay, I've accepted truly that this person is gone. I've accepted truly that we will not meet again. And that is the end of. So having said that, it's also important to know that these phases that we've talked about are not as sequentially arranged like this, because it's a natural phenomenon. So there are a lot of overlaps, at different phases, two phases occurring together almost at the same time. And but for the sake of understanding, that is why it has been sequentially arranged like this.
Thank you, Jazakallah khairan, sir. I was trying to understand. You said that the normal phase for grief is 6 months, so the phases should be within the 6 months, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Jazakallah khairan. So, Ustaz Qasim, the next question is for you. So we understand that the prophets before us, they went through a series of pain, series of grief, loss of children and all of that. So I'd like for you to share with us, hadiths that supports or that references how a Muslim should deal with grief.
نعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We give thanks to Allah for giving us the opportunity today, most importantly, to address one of the salient issues that affects not just the Muslims, but the entire human race. Most importantly, it's a phase of life. When we talk about grief, the first thing we need to make everybody to be aware of is that grief is part of the component of life. It makes life itself complete, because it's not possible for someone being in this world to go through the phase of happiness all through. Somebody came to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to make a complaint. And the first thing the Prophet told the lady was that, look into my eyes. And he asked her, what did you see? He said, I have seen white and I have seen black. So he said, if it is only white that is there, then the eyes will never be functional. If it is only the black that you can see, the black will never be functional. So invariably, it is those two parts of experience in life that makes a complete human being. Even Allah says in the Quran, وَتِلِكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. that at some point in life, you'll have some situations that will make you extremely happy. And at another point in life, you have some other situations where you become extremely sad. And that is why Allah said again in the Quran that in ma'al usri yusra, fa in ma'al usri yusra, that surely with hardship comes ease.
Sir, Ustaz, sorry to cut you short. I'd like for you to tell us, the verses of the Quran, if you do not mind, and the chapters, just for reference purposes.
Thank you very much. That particular verse is in Surah Al-Inshirah. Alam nashra laka sadrak wa wada'na anka wizrak alladhi anqadha dhahrak wa rafa'na laka dhikrak fa inna ma'al usri yusra fa idha faraghta fansab wa ila rabbika farghab. So if you go into that particular verse, the verse we want to use out of that surah is in ma'al usri yusra. In fact, we can even use that particular verse itself because that particular surah, because the surah itself, it is the surah that is addressing grief. Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Have we not expanded your breasts? Wa wada'na anka wizrak. Have we not taken off all your burdens, all your loads, the kind of things that is making you to grieve, that is chasing your life, those things that is a challenge to your life. That is Surah Al-Inshirah. And Levi anqadha dhahrak. Those particular burdens that are so heavy, he said, and Levi anqadha dhahrak, it is just as if somebody has carried a load behind his back. And Allah now said, the load that is chasing your back, the way you carried it. And Levi anqadha dhahrak wa rafa'na laka dhikrak. So when Allah mentioned all those things at first, Allah now sought to remind the person in question, which was the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah sought to remind him of the fact that have we not conferred some favors upon you as well? So that during the time of grief, you continue to think of some of those favors that Allah has conferred upon you. He said, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ, and we elevated your remembrance. We elevated your name so much that there's hardly a particular place in the Arabian Peninsula that they do not mention the name of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even up till now, we see anytime you want to do adhan, you must mention the name of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On Salat, you must mention the name of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On Iqamah, even on Salat, Assalamu alayka ya Nabi. So that particular verse itself encapsulates the concept of grief. That when you are in the state of grief, you need at that particular time, the first thing you think through is that you should see it as a phase of life. You should see that if you do not go through that stage, maybe you might not be better going forward in life. Grief, Allah deliberately brings that to be able to make you to be solid enough to be able to withstand some other challenges again that you might encounter in life. In a particular verse of the Quran, Allah said, those verses I'm talking about, at the end of the lecture, I'm going to type it out and tell us where to find them so that we can go through for the sake of reading. Allah said, nasu an yutraku an yakulu amanu wa hum la yuftanun. Does mankind think that we are going to leave him without testing him when he says that he has actually believed in Allah? Test is meant for promotion. You know, in our daily life, when you go, you read for exams, you do all those stuffs, and probably in an office place, they tell you to go and do promotional exams. So before you do those exams, you'll have read, you'll have gone through tough times and a lot of things. But when you do the examination and when you eventually passed, you become elevated to the next level. So the concept of grief actually tells us that those things happens to you just to be able to promote you to the next level. It happens to you to be able to ensure that in life, you are able to withstand, you have what it takes, the kind of quality it takes to be able to navigate yourself for the next challenges that you'll be facing. So in that particular, the verse I mentioned earlier on, where Allah said, in normal usri yusra, Allah said, surely for every difficulty that you find yourself in life, the difficulty can be a form of loss in wealth. The difficulty can be in a form of losing somebody that is very dear to you. The difficulty can be in sort of something you've been doing for so long and you've not been able to reap the fruit or the benefit of such. And at some point, you are almost getting frustrated. It happened to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam too, when they told us that there was a particular year, we call it the year of grief for him. That year was the year that he lost his uncle. That year was the same year that the Prophet lost his wife. That same year was the same year that the Prophet went to Taif and he was stoned in Taif. That year was a year that is enough to shatter any human being to pieces. But because Allah wanted to give us some examples, Allah wanted to tell us that life is not a bed of roses. Somebody that you have seen in this world that is great, when you continue to ask them one or two questions, they will tell you all those things that they have encountered in life. And those things were part of their formative years towards their greatness. So they will tell you, so point in time, I had no money. So points in time, my dearest person I loved, I lost him. I was shaking beyond, it took me off balance. They will narrate a lot of ordeals like that for you. But eventually, we don't see all those travails that they've gone through in their life. What we see in their life now is their final destination. The kind of personality they are. They are people who have financial successes, or they are people who are well positioned in life in terms of greatness. But by the time they want to tell you what took them to that particular greatness, they will start telling you all the challenges they face in life. And that is the kind of attitude that a Muslim must demonstrate during the time of grief. So the first thing is that we must see it as a part of life, as a component of life, as a phase in life. We must see it as a kind of an avenue where Allah wants to use it to push you to your next level in life. Allah wants to use it to take you to another position of height, of great heights. And these are some of those things. And that's why the Prophet told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a particular hadith, he said, Ajaban amrul mu'min, that it is so wonderful, the case of a Muslim, because if anything happens to him, Allah will eventually give him reward. If something good happens to him, he will receive the good in this life, and at the same time, because he's thankful to Allah, Allah is going to reward him. And if again the contrary happens to him, the contrary is something that is not pleasant, something that is not good, something that he himself detested, something that is appalling, some things of such nature. The Prophet told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that if he does what is expected to do as at that particular time, then he's going to receive reward again. What is he expected to do? He should be patient, and he should see that particular occurrence as the time that Allah seeks, Allah wants to use to promote him. He should be thankful to Allah because Allah has done some things to him that are far, 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 far greater in the past. And he should be thankful to Allah too, because who knows whether if that does not happen to you, maybe something that is very, very bad, something that is even far, far worse might eventually happen to you. So this is the kind of attitude that a Muslim should be able to demonstrate. The first is a component of life. The second, you demonstrate patience in that particular situation. The third is that you persevere, because Allah said, Allah himself told us that Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Anybody who tends to persevere in the faces of trials and tribulation, Allah said, I'm going to be with that particular person. Then finally, Allah said in the Quran, for example, Surah Duha, you will not see this inherent in that particular surah. But the Mufassirun have told us that when Allah is referring to things of those nature, it actually means that Allah is trying to drive a point to us. Allah said, "Waduha wa layli idha saja ma wada'aka rabbuka wa ma qala." Allah said, "I swear by the dawn. I swear by the dawn. Waduha wa layli idha saja." And I swear by the night when it is in its darkest portion, darkest period. Mufassirun have told us that this particular verse, Allah is mentioning some things to us. The same verse where we have is another surah, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَى وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا تَجَلَّى. Allah said, I swear by the night when in its darkest period, وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا تَجَلَّى, and I swear by the day when it is in its glorious period. Those scholars have told us that the meaning of that is that it is not possible for the day to come into reality. It is not possible for the day to come if the night has not gone into its darkest period. When the night goes through its darkest period, then we have the Al-Fajr, then the day will eventually come. So scholars told us that the particular connotative meaning of those particular verse is that when you are going through tough time in your life, your trying period, perhaps that is a signal that Allah wants to really, really help you with some high level of assistance that you have not even witnessed in your life. They told us that Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, it was when he got to a situation where he felt there was no option again, there was no way again, there's nowhere to go. Right at his back was the Red Sea. In front of him was the soldiers of the Pharaoh. Right and left were mountainous terrain, and we have the wilderness. Where was it to go? Then at that particular time, when mankind feels that there's no hope, then Allah comes on board with his way out for us. So we should always, at every point in time when we are challenged with this kind of a situation, with the situation of grief, we should see it that it is part of those things that Allah has designed for us so that we can be able to excel to our next stage in life. It is tough, it is difficult, it might be really, really tough for us to be able to accept, but in reality, it forms part and parcel of life. And that's one of those things that will make us a very, very solid and strong human being in our next sojourn in life.
Thank you so much, sir, for that insightful answer. So there's an instance here, Dr. Kasim. I would like you to answer it. So you have a child basically that died in the UK, and the parents are in Nigeria, and they want you to bury the child in Nigeria. So is it permissible to transport dead bodies over long distances to bury them?
Well, concerned, it is not haram to do something of such, especially when you feel that in the kind of nation that the dead body finds himself, probably they might have challenges with Islamic rites and the things like that. You know, all those things we do when we have the dead. So in terms of bathing, the janaza, and every other thing that is associated with that. So it might not be wrong. As far as Islam is concerned, it is not wrong. The only challenge that you might have there is for what is the duration of this. Islam does not allow us to take corpse to the mortuary except for some reasons that we call those reasons daruri. Islam does not allow us to do all those things. So if you have to bring your child down here, then it has to be done quickly. Scholars have told us in some of the books of fiqh that the maximum acceptable time that you could take before you do those transports, which is even discouraged for you to stay that long, is 3 days. Because the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he himself spent 3 days before he was buried. And the reason being that the companions had to solve inherent challenges that is associated with the humor. They understood that the humor that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam left behind needs to be cemented into a single structure. And it was after they resolved that they went ahead and buried the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So without a cogent reason, you are not expected to delay your burial even up to that particular time. So if you need to transport your child or your beloved one from that particular place down to Nigeria, actually it's not a crime as far as Islam is concerned, as long as we don't go beyond the acceptable limits. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, now I'm so sorry to take you back. I just want to be clear. Are you saying that the duration should be no more than 3 days, or?
That, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. That the duration should not be more than 3 days. Anything outside that we are actually going out of the principles of Islam.
Okay, no. Jazakallah khairan, sir. So the next question is for both speakers. Would like for you to kindly share 3 healthy ways to deal with grief. So Dr. Ismail can go first. 3 healthy ways to deal with grief.
All right, thank you very much. Like I said earlier, that and like the stars also reiterated it, that grief is a normal aspect of life. However, we are aware of the fact that it can go out of the bound of normality and tilt the individual to mental illness if not well handled. So for any individual that is going through a period of grief, one important thing to do is to come to the reality of closure, what we call closure. Closure simply means acceptance that this thing has happened, this loss has happened, it is not reversible, and we have to accept it to be able to move on. So that is the concept of closure. And without closure, it will be difficult for any individual to come out of the grieving process, because that acceptance is the last phase of the grieving process, and the individual has to come to reality, come to reality of what has actually happened. So one important way, healthy way of dealing with grief is to come to reality with the concept of closure. Accept what has happened, and we discover that every other components of grief will begin to wane off once you accept what has happened. So closure is important. Then the second important thing is positivity and gratitude. It is often said in the field of psychology that where there is gratitude and where there's positivity, sadness, fear cannot have a place. So the individual has to be positive about what has happened. For instance, if this has not happened, could there be worse things that would have happened? That is being positive. What are the potential benefits of what has happened? Like the Ustaz said, Allah has given us a number of verses in the Holy Quran which have shown that after the darkest hours come the brightest hours. So we need to look at the individual that is going through the process of grief must understand the fact that what has happened for a reason. You understand? That is the concept of positivity. And there might be some benefits, either at the moment or later in the future, that will arise from what has happened. So that's the concept of positivity. And also gratitude is important. In every situation where we find ourselves, we must understand the fact that it is important for us to show gratitude to the superior being, someone that is superior to us, someone that determines the affairs of our lives, someone that fashions our destiny, someone that dictates what happens to us at every point in time. So we must always show gratitude. And we only show gratitude when we have realized the fact that there are reasons and there may be benefits that will arise from what has happened, that we don't actually, that's from what has happened at that particular moment. Then another important thing to do for a healthy grieving process is to seek support. It's always important to understand the fact that the grieving process is a very, very difficult process for every individual. And every person that is going through that process must understand and must accept support from the people around them. It is when you accept support from the people around that that the weight of the loss, will be lightened up. So it is important that we accept support from the people around us. There is no individual that functions as an island. God has created us as individuals to be what we call social animals. We thrive more in the midst of people. We thrive more in the midst of support, and we thrive more in the midst of love. So when the people around us are coming towards us to show us love, to show us support, then we must be open to the support that they are showing us. And that is the cultural concept of money. Every culture realizes this fact of support. And that is why every culture has a process of money. Money is a cultural component of grief, in the sense that it is a cultural response, the response of the people around us to us when we are going through a process of grief. People visit the individual that is grieving, offer warm words of support. They offer, even some go to the extent of sleeping over in the person's house to offer, longer duration of support. They go to the extent of giving material needs. Some bring food, some bring clothes, and those are part of the things that the Holy Prophet Muhammad has actually taught us also. So in the field of psychology, psychiatry, and psychology, we also understand and we also appreciate this concept of money, which is the cultural response to grieving process. So any individual that is going through the process of grief, in summary, must come to terms with the reality of acceptance. That is closure. Then the individual must be positive and also show gratitude. And lastly, the person must be open to support that is being offered by the people around us, which is a cultural concept of money. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ismail. So, Ustaz Kasim, please, would like to hear from you as well.
So thank you very much, Dr. Ismail. So basically, I want to quickly give us one of the quotes of one of the authors when it comes to grief. He said, "Those that are slaves of the moment see only mystery and wretchedness. Those that are slaves of the moment see only misery and wretchedness in times of grief. This is because they look only at the wall and the door of the room, whereas they should look beyond such barriers as are set before them." So during the moment of grief, what is expected that we do is that we should look beyond. We should try as much as possible to see how we can make the best out of the situation. Somebody made a quote and he said, "Convert a lemon into a sweet drink." That an intelligent person and skillful person transforms losses into profits, whereas the unwise and the unskilled person aggravates his own predicament, making two disasters out of one. Just one disaster, but if care is not taken, you start thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, and at the end of the day, we have multiple disasters. When the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was compelled out of Mecca, he was not happy. He was not happy. In fact, in one of his quotes that he said, "O Mecca, if not for the fact that I've been driven out of this place, I wouldn't have left you." But he said, by the time he got to Medina, he converted all those mystery and adversary. He converted all those things into positivity. Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was imprisoned. They said before he was in prison, they gave him several options. He knew the options on the table. He said, "What did I do to you? If you kill me, if you say that they should kill me, then don't you know that is going to be shahada for me? It means by you killing me, it means you are indeed helping me not to give account in the presence of Allah." He said, "If you exile me from this particular land, don't you know that Allah said, that if you exile me from here, you are in fact assisting me to fulfill an injunction of Allah that Allah says, travel on the surface of the earth. And if you decide to imprison me, out of no option, that will be khalwa for me. And they told us that Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah was, in fact, he was imprisoned. And they said, while he was in prison, because he never had the opportunity to teach, to do da'wah, what he did in prison was that he took himself up and he wrote on the walls of his prison cell. So much that they said by the time he died, they wrote all those things that he wrote on the prison wall, and it became volumes of book credited to Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah up to this present time we had. So he was imprisoned. It was a terrible situation for him, but he converted that to what he would not have been able to do if he was outside the prison. They told us that one of those particular Islamic scholars, they call him Imam Sharakshi, they said he was imprisoned as well. Not just in prison, he was at the bottom of a well, and he managed then to produce 20 volumes of Islamic jurisprudence while he was in prison. And these are the kind of attitude that we need to look at, that I've been denied of my beloved one. What am I going to do next? What am I going to make out of this? I've been denied of this particular opportunity or this particular privilege. What am I going to make out of it? Apart from the fact that Allah said in that particular verse of the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, when Allah said, "Qalu inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ulaika alayhim salawatu min rabbihim wa ulaika humul muhtadun." Allah said, "Wala nabluwannakum bi shay'in min al-khawf wal ju' wa naqsin min al-amwali wal anfus wa thamarat wa bashir as-sabirin. Alladhina idha asabatum musibatun qalu inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." Now Allah said, "Wala nabluwannakum bi shay'in min al-khawf wal ju' wa naqsin min al-amwali wal anfus wa thamarat." Allah said, we are going to test you. And out of that particular test we are going to give you is decrease in wealth, decrease in children, decrease in most of those things that things that we use to live, to have our wonderful livelihood. Our children, our wealth, positions, and all those things. And I said, I'm going to test you with hunger too. And he said, we give glad tidings to those people who are patient. And those people that when those trials and all those things happens to them, they say, we belong to Allah, and to Allah we shall return. The people we're talking about are the people that Allah himself is going to recite his salatu upon and his blessings upon. They are the people that are actually guided. So in summary, and in tandem with what the doctor has told us, in terms of trial, in terms of tribulations, we should try as much as possible to make the best out of the situation. We should try as much as possible to be patient in that particular situation. We should try as much as possible to ensure that we give opportunity to continue to thank Allah in his infinite mercy for not making it go beyond what we have actually seen. Because we have seen situations that are far, far, far worse than the kind of situation that we find ourselves. Allah Ta'ala.
Jazakallah khairan. Dr. Ismail, very shortly, I'd like for you to tell us ways we can comfort a loved one who's grieving. Very shortly, sir, because you're behind time.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. If we find ourselves in a position of money, that is, we are the people that want to comfort someone that is grieving. It's important for us to be empathic, to show empathy. And empathy simply means that we need to put ourselves in the shoes of that particular person. We need to understand what the person is going through. Empathy goes beyond getting to the person's house and start crying. When you are crying with someone that is crying, that is sympathy. But by the time you understand what the person is going through, and you use that to influence, the kind of support that you offer to that particular person, that is empathy. So it is important for us that we should understand what empathy is and apply it while trying to console individuals that are grieving. Another important thing is that we need to provide support. And it is after understanding what the grieving person is going through that we will be able to provide support. What forms of support? Support starts from the words that we speak out of our mouth. It's not, when someone is grieving, it's not the time to get to the person's house and be saying things like, are you the first person that this will happen to? Something worse has happened to Mama Lagbaja, something worse has happened to so person, and the person did well. So you too should brace yourself up. And so that is not the time to be comparing what has happened to that person with what happened to other people. That may even make matters worse. So support starts from what we say, the kind of words that we speak from our mouth. We should provide the person with soothing words that when the person listens to them, the person is moved emotionally, the person is relieved of the heavy burden of the loss. So that is very important. Also, another form of support could be staying with the person, in our physical presence. In fact, in Yoruba culture, they may even stay with the person for days, though sometimes it even goes beyond the point of reasoning, where they even become a nuisance. But we should understand at what point in time does this person need our physical presence? At what point in time do we leave the person to be alone? So that's also very, very important. Another thing that is important is for us to understand what are the things that this person needs at this particular moment. Someone that is grieving, may not be able to go to work, may not be able to monitor his or her businesses, may not be able to make money to fend for himself, him or herself, and also maybe for the children or other members of the family. So we should understand the material needs of those people at that point in time, in terms of food, in terms of shelter, in terms of clothing, in terms of money, in terms of any other thing that they may need at that particular point in time, to help them pull through that process early and on time. So those are important forms of support that we need to provide. Another thing that is important is that we need to be sensitive to the experience of that person, and we must be able to help them to seek help if it is needed as promptly as possible. So we need to know, if it's only when we are close to the person that we'll be able to identify that, this person's grieving process is going beyond the point of control. Let me give us an example. A woman lost her husband. And like I said, it's part of the normal grieving process to be saying things like, wait for me, I will come and join you. Let me come and join you in the first day, second day, third day. And maybe by the fourth month, this person is still saying those things. And we now come across maybe a particular note that she has written on how to take her own life in order to go and join her husband. That particular event is no more a normal thing. It has become a suicidal plan. She has a plan already to kill herself. At that point in time, we must know that this grieving process has gone beyond the point of normality. It has become an abnormal thing. At that point in time, that person must see a psychiatrist, for support. Let me give us another example. Someone is grieving and, has, lost interest in things that she used to enjoy doing before. She's now feeling sad and has not been able to go to work and all those things. And a month after, you still come to the person's house and you still see the person finding it difficult to even raise up from bed. When she wakes up in the morning, she feels so weak, doesn't have the energy to stand up from bed, doesn't have the energy to do every other thing that she needed to do for that day. At that point in time, we should know that this thing is going out of hand. Then we should provide necessary assistance. So those are the things that we can do to help people that are going through the grieving process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ismail. Ustaz, please, would like for you to educate us on the burial rights of a Muslim and what things are we not to do.
Thank you very much. So when we talk about the burial rights of a Muslim, that's a topic on its own, but I'll just try as much as possible to pick the key things, especially as it is related to what we're talking about here. So when a Muslim dies, the first thing which people do not do It's not because they don't do it, but because they are not really conversant with what fiqh really says. Is that out of the wealth of the person in question, you pick out of the wealth of the person in question, the money that will be used for the burial of the deceased. So in most cases, what we do here oftentimes is that out of sympathy, out of all those things, we are the ones that actually provide all these things. But the standard is that it should be the sweat of the person in question. That is what fiqh says. Because we never could say, we never can tell the source of the wealth of the other set of people that are trying to help the deceased. So we take the wealth, we use that wealth for the purpose of burial. And when we talk about burial, we all know those things that is involved from the janaza, in terms of taking from bathing of the deceased, then the burial itself proper. I don't want to go deep into all those ones. Then the second thing that is expected of us is that we take his money to pay his debts, all the debts that he has accumulated. And that's why during the time of burial, that announcement is particularly made. Because the Prophet told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the soul of the disease will be hanging except the debt of that disease is actually paid. So you use his money to pay his debts. If he does not have money, then people who are his beloved, they should try as much as possible to ensure that the debt is paid. Then the third aspect of that is we use his money for the what we call the wasiya. Wasiya actually means the will that you made outside what Allah has told you to do. In Islam, the Quran has told us how to distribute inheritance when the debt is gone. But you are equally permitted as well to make some donations to people. And that donations, it might be to Islam, it might be to mosque, it might be to some people, it might be to anywhere. That donation, Islam has told us that it should not go more than thuluth. And that is called for a particular hadith when one of the companions was about to die. And that was Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas. He was about to die and he told the Prophet that I'm a very wealthy man and am I permitted to donate all my money in charity? The Prophet said, no. It is good for you that you leave your children to be wealthy than to leave them in penury and poverty by the time you are gone. So he said, okay, if I'm not permitted to donate all my wealth, can I do half of my wealth? The Prophet said, no, half of your wealth is too much. He said, okay, can I do 1/3 of my wealth? And then the Prophet responded, Fasuluth kathir. 1/3 itself is much. But that particular hadith he said it is much, but he never objected that he should not do 1/3. So scholars, they picked that particular hukumu from there, and they said you are permitted. So if the deceased has written a will that this is the particular donation I intend to make, becomes our obligation to quickly try as much as possible to fulfill that. Then the other thing is that when the person is dead, as a Muslim, we are permitted to grieve, but we are not permitted to grieve beyond what Islam has recommended. They told us that the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when his son, Ibrahim, when he died, the Prophet held onto his son and water was dripping from the eyes of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And some of his companions, they asked him that, but you told us not to grieve. He said, yes, that is nature. You can cry, but not wailing, not rolling yourself on the floor, not shouting, not proclaiming some things that is against Islam, like we do in this part of the world. I was in the general hospital one of those days, and a man lost his wife. It is understandable. But the way he shouted, rolling through the floor, everybody gathered around, comforting him. And I knew that it is something that is very, very tough on him. And we understand that it's not something that sometimes can be beyond control. But as a Muslim, if you are somebody that have had this at the back of your mind, and you have been visiting the sick, and you have been visiting people who are deceased, and you see a lot of things that they go through, if you have trained your mind to that particular level, perhaps Allah will assist you. So what we expect of a Muslim is that, yes, you can grieve, but don't utter statements that are bad. Don't utter statements that are anti-Islam. We all know all those things. Don't grieve beyond proportion. Don't grieve beyond measure. We can cry, we can weep, not wailing and shouting and doing all those things. These are the standards that is expected of us as Muslims. Then on the other hand as well, as a Muslim, like they've told us, everything that you can do, and that is the rahmah of Islam, that is the rahmah of Allah on Muslims. As a Muslim, it is only in Islam, I don't know of any other religion, that they say when somebody has died, yes, his righteous action has ended, but there are a couple of things, a lot of things that you can still do, that Allah will use that as a source of mercy for the person who is the deceased. When Amr ibn al-As was about to die, he beckoned on the companions and said, please, when you're about to bury me, do not go. Because we went to the battles together. We went to do dawah together. We are brothers in Islam, we are Muslims. Do not go away immediately, because even if Allah wants to punish me and he sees people like you in my surrounding, Allah will be shy to punish me. Do not go away until you recite Surah to Yasin for me. That was what he heard from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So anything that will do, that will make Allah to look upon the diseased with mercy, it is expected of us to do. To askar, to tahlil, to tahmid, to sadaqah, to any other thing that we feel that we need to do in the name of the disease. You can perform Hajj for the diseased. You can go to a mosque and donate mats for them. You can donate, you can do all those things for them. You can organize prayer session for the diseased. Whether day 1, whether day 2, whether day 3, whether day 7, whether 8, there's no particular day that is legislated in Islam. So if some people say they are doing 7 days, fine, so be it, there's no issue. If they do 8 days, if they do 21, 41, if they decide to do it every day till the end of the year, as long as the intention is to say for this disease, this is the kind of askar or dua that we are trying to do. And as long as we don't go beyond measure, we cannot say somebody has died and we now go around, now start doing celebration, bringing drinks and minerals and all those things together. This is very, very wrong. It is not Islamic. It is not something that we're expected to do for somebody who is a Muslim. Talk less of now bringing alcohol and a couple of things. So when we now see some brothers amongst ourselves or some sisters who say that we don't want to do the kind of fida that we do nowadays, well, it is understandable, because there's no way sometimes in this part of the world where you decide to say, okay, we want to do fida, we want to do all those things without people now not going beyond means. But the principle is simple. So it now behoves us to now take on the specifics. The principle is that whatever we can do in terms of askar, in terms of tilawah to the Quran, in terms of sadaqat, in terms of any righteous action that we're expected to do, that we can do, that we can do to make Allah to have mercy upon the disease, I think is part of our responsibility to do for our brothers. So somebody dies, dig a well for the person. Somebody dies, you have the money, build a mosque for the person. Somebody dies, build a madrasa and name it after the person. Employ asatizas for the person. Do all those things for the person. It is not a crime. You do tahalil. Abikulli tahlilatin sadaqa. Abikulli tahmidatin sadaqa. These are some of those things that the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, that these are acts of charity that we could do. So we can now use the principle to coin out our specifics. Somebody was asking me a question yesterday night. I'm very sorry to digress. Was asking me a question yesterday night, and I said, well, when somebody dies, part of the principle I do as a person is that I don't even encourage that you bring food to that particular point, because when you bring food to that particular place, if care is not taken, you turn it to merrymaking. Somebody is dead, People bring food, they start eating, and they turn the whole thing to scenarios. But it is not a crime to cook. When you cook, look for people who are less privileged. Do take away and go and distribute it for them. By the time they eat and they are happy, if the intention is to uplift, to seek for mercy from Allah to the diseased, then I think that is not a problem. So the principle is very simple. This principle is whatever we can do that will make Allah to appease, to appease Allah. Whatever we can do to make Allah to have mercy on the diseased, it is as far as Islam is concerned, it is acceptable. Wallahu alam.
Jazakallah khairan, sir. So I'd like to plead with the audience. Since I do not see any questions in the chat box, and I have about 3 more questions to ask our speakers, so I think I'll just go ahead in 10 minutes, kindly, to ask the 3 questions that I have. And I think they're important, that's why, so please. So Imam Qasim, you spoke about the burial rights of a Muslim. I'd like for you to also talk about the certain traditions shaving the hair when the person dies. There are also some other ones like staying indoor for lengthy days, and then drinking the water used to wash the dead body. So are these things permissible? There's another one also, doing Sara, like days after the person has died, frying akara and all of that. So are these traditions, are they permissible?
Well, like you have stated, لا تتبعون سنن من كان قبلكم شبرا بشبر وذراعا أو ذراعا حتى ولا دخلوا جحر رجل لدخلتموه قالوا أيهود ونصارى يا رسول الله. So what the Prophet has simply told us is that sometimes we go into some level of imitations, so much that even if some of those our predecessors, if they enter into the cave, we'll enter the cave alongside with them because we just want to be like them at all costs. So I see all these candle nights, they put candle, people put on blacks, and they'll say they're trying to mourn people and do a couple of things. All these things, they are not principles of Islam as far as Islam is concerned. So the only thing that we're expected to do, the acceptable limit for mourning of a Muslim is not more than 3 days that you should be visible. When we say mourning, in terms of you see them weeping, not wailing and making all those noises. So 3 days, that's the acceptable limit for us to be able to mourn the deceased one. Then people doing a couple of things that it is mandatory to stay indoors. Islam has not told us that it is mandatory to stay indoors. What Islam has specifically told us is that you do a period of 4 months and 10 days for the woman. That 4 months and 10 days is been very clear, the purpose. That 4 months and 10 days is not for you to completely sit down at home and do not do any activity. Because, for example, somebody who works, somebody who has to go to office, somebody who has to do a couple of things. The only thing that that is expected of you for those period of time, that we should not be seeing you celebrating. We should not be seeing you gorgeously dressed. We should not be seeing you like somebody who is not in sober reflection. So if it requires that you still need to go to work, then you have to go to your work. But we should not see you going to parties. We should not see you going to places where people are doing merrymaking. You should comport yourself. We should not see you talking with some other men or some other people as at that particular period of time. So that period of 4 months and 10 days, that is exactly what Islam has strictly prescribed for the Muslim. So during those periods, we are not expected to follow those traditions of shaving the heads. It is even detested in Islam that a woman should shave their heads. A woman is not expected to shave their head. Look, if we go through the books of the fiqh, even this low cut and all those things, a lot of scholars, they detest it for women, that you leave your hair and it's part of your things that Allah has used to adorn you as a woman. A woman is expected to adorn herself. So talk less of now shaving your hair to the scalp completely. They're now drinking the dead body, the water of a dead body. These are cultures that are very, very terrible and are alien. So I'm very, very sorry. We are not being tribalistic, but if you happen to come to be somewhere that comes from the East or that part of the world, even if you are an Easterner, as a Muslim, you should detest all those things. It should be part of those things that should fight vehemently so that people do not find themselves in that. A lot of women are going through serious challenges where they marry somebody, and at the end of the day, what you never bargained for in your life, apart from the fact that they will now say you are the one that killed your husband, while you are still money, they accuse you of killing your husband, they confiscate all the properties and all those things, and they subject you to things that are very, very unhuman. So these are some of those things that is not expected of us as a Muslim. So the black attire is not something that is synonymous with mourning in Islam. In Islam, in fact, they told us that the black is the black dress is the best of the dresses for women. So, but we cannot compel a woman to be putting on black morning and afternoon. Islam allows for variety. So, but it's just to tell you that that particular black we're talking about is not synonymous to mourning. Those culture, it is the Western culture. It is the culture that is being exported, and we are now Muslims consciously or unconsciously are beginning to accept all those things as part of life. So these are some of those things that we should do. So for that 4 months and 10 days, the expectation is that during that particular time, at the time that we should limit our activity, we should restrict our activity, we should ensure that they don't see us not in a sober reflection. Scholars have even told us that one of those things is that if that woman at that particular time is pregnant, at least by 4 months, it will have started becoming visible, so that by the time she wants to move on with her life, we'll know whether she still has a baby or she does not have a baby with the disease. And at least we know that our activities are restricted as at that particular time. So we cannot say that probably it was another man or something like that. So these are the standards that Islam has actually given us as Muslims, and we are not expected to go beyond what Allah stipulated for us. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan, sir. Although I didn't hear the part of the akara frying, if it was
okay, so
it was just very briefly, very briefly.
Thank you. Well, you know, there are some things that people do that sometimes you cannot say haram, you cannot say halal. You know, if the intention of akara is to do sadaqah for people who are less privileged, might not be wrong. It's just like, for example, for the nikah that we do, you know, when you want the man and the woman, they want to enter, probably the man is coming on board. You see the wives of the house, the wives of the house, they come on board, they spread the cloth on the floor, and they expect people to put money on that. Yes, it might not be wrong, as long as we have not said that is the sadaqah of the lady. You understand? So these are mutual exchange of gifts. As far as nikah is concerned, might not be wrong. You understand? As long as we do not use that to negate what Allah has spoken about. So somebody now doing akara and doing all those things might not be wrong, as long as the intention is for sadaqah. So if you don't do akara, if you feel that it is rice I want to use to do, and if it's some other form of sadaqah that you want to do, fine. It's just that sometimes, I personally, sometimes if some people, for example, I give you a typical example. Somebody called someone and he said, can you do this sadaqah? Go and buy, I don't know what it's called, what adun is called in English. Buy adun, take sugar, take sugar cane, buy all these things, go and use that to do sahara. And I said, sorry, what if the person refuses to take adun or sugar cane and all those things for sahara? The person that came to me, I said, don't mind them, just get some money, go and do sadaqah. Sadaqah is halal. So if somebody meets me on the road now and tells me that, Mr. Man, I've seen a vision to you that you should fast for 7 days. Then you should not go and do sadaqah. I said, you tell me to fast. I used to fast before now. So it is not what you are saying that will tell me to fast or not to fast. And it is not what you have said that will tell me because you have said I should fast, I will now refuse to fast. No, it's an activity I've been doing before. The sadaqah you say I should do is the sadaqah I've been doing before. So I can still do all those things, provided that we do not ascribe some other things that is not part of Islam to it. Okay, so I saw the question. They said, what is Sarah? Sarah is in Yoruba language, we call it Sodako. So it's a traditional thing that they do in Yoruba land, where they will say, Eloshi Sarah, go and do Sarah. And so that one in Yoruba land is just a form of Sodako. So, but in Yoruba land too, you know, if we now have some fetish tendency that you now ascribe to that, then you don't do that kind of akarabos. You don't do all those ones. You would rather move to some other things so that at least you help people to get out of the kind of fetishism. But normally, as far as Islam is concerned, if the intention behind the doing of that akara is sadaqah, it is not wrong. But I personally will encourage, why not let us move beyond that and do some other things? Why not let us do some other things? You can buy, I run a madrasa. I will never allow anybody to bring those things to my madrasa for my students. No, I will never allow them. But if you bring biscuits, fine, give them biscuits. Tell us that you are doing housewarming, no problem. Or somebody is doing so. I'll collect that. Or buy snacks, bring it, I take it. But any other thing aside from that, I don't take it. Not because of any other thing, but because when Allah sees you, you should try as much as possible to make people to see your plainness as well. By the time you start allowing things like that, people might start thinking that social person is being fetish. I'm sorry to digress, but the basic thing is that sadaqah, as far as fiqh, that akara, as far as fiqh is concerned, it is not haram. But my personal opinion, my personal suggestions, do some other things that is different from the akara boss. Wallahu alam.
Okay, now Jazakallah khairan to both of our speakers. But Dr. Qasim, would like for you to give us, final words generally on grief and just to round up the session. Do you have any final words for us?
Dr. Ismail or
Dr. Ismail.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful session so far. And as my parting words, I just want to say that grief is normal. It's a normal response, and it's a way of life. Every one of us at one point in time or the other will most likely experience it. However, it's important for us to know that it can also go beyond the bound of normality and becomes a problem. And also, like the stars has told us that apart from going beyond the bound of normality and becoming a problem, it can also go beyond the bound of acceptance or in our religion as Muslims, and can become a form of trespass if not well handled. However, having said that, every one of us should note that when grief is becoming an issue, when it is persisting beyond 6 months, when the symptoms are becoming so severe that they are impairing with the individual's functioning, those are pointers to the fact that the person may need professional assistance. And it is important to take action on time so as to prevent further decline in functioning and to prevent it translating into a more serious mental illness. Thank you very much.
Karen, thank you so much. Ustaz, sorry, someone just dropped this in the chat box. The person is saying, you spoke about reciting Surah Yasin for the deceased. Does it mean that one of the rites of burying every dead Muslim, or is it specifically done for only the Sahabas?
Well, not specifically done for only the Sahabas. It's one of the recommendations of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That when somebody dies, Surah Yasin and a lot of Tahleel should be recited to those persons. So Amr ibn al-As at the point of death just used that because it was part of those things that he learned from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's on that.
Okay, now, Jazakallah khairan, sir, Dr. Ismail and Ustaz Kasim. Thank you so much for the insightful.
Before you go, I'm very sorry to say this. There was a question you mentioned before we go. You said, how soon can one remarry? I think we didn't address that.
No, because of the time, yes, no.
Yes. So just give me 30 seconds to be able to address that. So I've mentioned that I said 4 months, 10 days is the either period, after which she can now proceed for the marriage. But at the same time, you need to look into the cultural understanding, cultural inclination of your environment. Somebody whose husband just died and is getting married in 4 months, 10 days in Yoruba, in this part of the world, people will raise a lot of eyebrow. So, but you cannot be less than that. And it is not permissible for any man to ask for your hand in marriage within those 4 months, 10 days. In fact, Islam said any man that asks for your hand in marriage between that 4 months and 10 days becomes haram for you to marry the lady. The moment you propose to the woman during that 4 months and 10 days becomes eventually haram for you to marry that lady. So you can now spend about maybe a year or thereabouts in line with our cultural inclination here, so that you don't get yourself into unnecessary controversy. But the standard is 4 months, 10 days, just to be able to add to that, so that I know that for listing that question, probably somebody might have requested an answer to that.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much, sir. We pray that whoever is listening, whoever is going through grief, that Allah eases your pain, that Allah grants you the patience to go through it, and that it makes it easy for you and grants you all the support that you might need. So we would like for a closing prayer from any of the speakers. I do not want to pick. I want anybody to volunteer.
Dr. Ismail, can you help us with that? Okay. As a matter of fact, I need your contacts for some discussion after this session.
And also, I'd like to announce, sorry, I just dropped it in the chat box. We have a networking session after this session. We want our audience to stay back for, networking and getting to know each other, basically. So now, please, Dr. Ismail, go ahead.
Okay. Well, before I give the closing prayer, let me just take permission. I have a therapy session immediately after this lecture, so I may not be able to partake in the networking session.
Oh, no. Really sorry about that. For the audience. No, it's fine.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Alhamdulillah, we give all thanks to Almighty Allah for the grace of life. We thank Him for the opportunity to be here today and to rub minds together and learn things that we further strengthen our Muslim Ummah in the path of Al-Islam. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take this session as a form of blessing for each and every one of us, and to take it as a form of propitiation for our sins and our misgivings. We pray to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen each and every one of us during our difficult times, so that we don't go astray and we don't go against the dictates of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May He continue to bless each and every one of us in our daily activities, and may He continue to uplift us so that we can be shining lights to propagate Islam further. Amen.
Jazakallah khairan, sir. Thank you so much. We're grateful to have both of you on this session. We pray that Allah rewards you abundantly and that it continues to increase your knowledge and guide your path, inshallah. Thank you so much. I don't know, this question is quite important. Somebody's saying, is there an Hida period for the man who has lost his wife? Dr. Kasim, can you quickly just mention something on that before we...
Well, there's no Hida period for a man, but the only thing we know is that just the grieving moment should not be less than 3 days. Should not be much more than 3 days. So the discretion is for the man. You need to look at our cultural inclination as well, but there's no Hida period for a man. So maybe after 3 months, after 4 months, after 5 months, as you desire. But we need to look at the reality on ground as well, so that we don't get ourselves into avoidable controversies. Wallahu a'lam.
No, no. Jazakallah khairan. So we've come to the end of the session. Thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To the audience, you guys should